Today, I'm sharing a case I simply couldn't ignore. Right up front, if you're extremely sensitive to stories involving deeply unfair, truly horrifying treatment of people, you might want to skip this video. For everyone who's staying, welcome back to the channel, where we occasionally dive into real crimes and bizarre phenomena. If that's your thing, hit subscribe, and let's get into today's story. Let me introduce you to a girl named Junko Furuta. She was described as the perfect teenager. She didn't smoke, didn't drink, got excellent grades, and worked part-time as a waitress after school. Junko was loved at school for her kind personality and strong work ethic. She lived in Misato, a small town not far from Tokyo, just about 30 minutes by train to the popular Shibuya district. Now picture one of the guys, Shinji Minato. He lived even closer to Tokyo, only about 15 minutes away. Minato was the complete opposite of Junko, a local troublemaker who often hung out with his friends in one of the parks in Misato. According to media reports, their favorite pastime was harassing random girls. One of his friends, Hiroshi Miyano, who was a classmate of Furuta's, had a crush on her but knew it was one-sided. She never responded to his advances, and she clearly wasn't impressed when told he supposedly had ties to the Yakuza. That didn't wow her. It actually scared her. On November 25, 1988, Miyano spotted her in the park and convinced Shinji Minato and two other friends to get revenge for her rejection. Junko often rode her bike through that park. It was her usual route home from her part-time job. The boys recognized her and put their pre-planned scheme into motion. Shinji Minato pushed Furuta as she rode by. She fell to the ground, and at that moment, Hiroshi happened to approach and help her up. Minato had already slipped away by then, but Hiroshi decided to follow through. He kindly offered to take her home, and in her confusion, she agreed. Soon you'll see why that was a fatal mistake. Instead of taking her home, Hiroshi brought Furuta to an abandoned warehouse. Once inside, Miyano threatened to kill her and her entire family if she made a sound. He again tried to intimidate her with his supposed Yakuza connections, then raped her. Afterward, the guy and poor Junko returned to the park where Shinji Minato was waiting. They told her they knew where she lived. In Japan, student addresses were written in school notebooks kids had to carry, and that if she resisted, the Yakuza would deal with her family. Unable to fight back under those threats, she went with the boys to Shinji Minato's house, where she was gang-raped that very first night. Realizing her family would panic if she simply vanished, the boys played it safe. They forced her to call her parents and say she'd run away to a friend's house. The terrified girl did it, not once, but 3 times, from late November through mid-December. At first, Minato's parents suspected nothing. Their son told them Furuta was his girlfriend and would be coming over often. In reality, it was far worse. Furuta didn't just visit, she was held captive in the Minato family home for nearly a month and a half. The parents didn't intervene because they were terrified of the Yakuza too. Shinji Minato had scared not only the kidnapped girl, but his own mother and father into silence, so they turned a blind eye. For 44 days, Junko Furuta lived in absolute hell. She was repeatedly raped, alone and in groups. It started with Minato and his friends, but soon other men, acquaintances of the teens, joined in. Up to 12 men a day, if you can call them that. The rapists showed photos and videos to their contacts, yet none tried to stop it. Torture was constant and brutal. They hung Junko from the ceiling in Minato's room, beat her like a punching bag, defecated on her, inserted matches, lighters and other objects into her body, forced her to dance naked, and countless other horrific acts. Her body, especially her eyes and genitals, was burned repeatedly. They poured hot wax on her. Sometimes they'd tie her hands and feet, make her lie on the floor, and drop a barbell loaded with weights onto her stomach. They fed her tiny portions, causing severe weight loss. Food was mostly replaced with large amounts of milk, alcohol, water, and live cockroaches. Eventually, her body began to rot while she was still alive, and the boys lost interest. One of the first to raise the alarm was a witness to the abuse. Hiroshi had invited him to have fun, but the young man, seeing what was happening in Minato's room, went home, told his brother, who told their parents, and the parents called the police. Police responded to the report and visited the Minato home. This could have ended everything, but it didn't. Minato's parents assured them there was no girl there, and the suspicions were mistaken. The officers found that convincing and left. They didn't even do a quick search, even though the homeowners invited them inside to check. The second time, Junko herself tried to get help. By some miracle, she escaped the room and called the police. But she couldn't finish the call. The boys caught her and dragged her back. When police called back, Hiroshi Miyano answered and convinced them again that nothing was wrong. It was a mistake. For trying to escape, the rapists poured lighter fluid on Junko's legs and set them on fire. For all 44 days, no one intervened. The Minato family was terrified of the Yakuza. By then, Junko's parents had reported her missing, but police efforts were far from effective. Losing sexual interest in Junko didn't mean the boys stopped craving violence. During those 44 days, they committed at least one more gang rape. Threatening her with a knife and the Yakuza, they forced her into a car and took her to a motel. Freeing her was never an option. As they later said in interrogations, they were afraid of getting caught. Junko understood her dire situation, but couldn't escape, call for help, or defend herself. She was under constant watch and threats. On January 4th, 1989, one of the young men, furious after losing at mahjong, savagely attacked her. That released his anger and ended her suffering. Afterward, to cover their tracks, the rapists wrapped Junko's body in a blanket, stuffed it into a suitcase, and figured out what to do next. They decided to put her in a metal drum and fill it with concrete. They first planned to dump it in the ocean, but changed their minds and left the drum on a vacant lot near a construction site. They were convinced they'd gotten away with it. 2 weeks passed, and it seemed to have no effect on the teens. They acted as if those 44 days of torture and rape had never happened. Everything changed when Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested on suspicion of gang raping another girl. In the police station, Hiroshi overheard officers discussing an unsolved murder case. Convinced it was about Junko Furuta, though it wasn't, Miyano said he'd confess and show them the body. That led him to turn in himself and all his accomplices. Without that coincidence, Junko would likely still be listed as missing, and her mutilated body in a 300-kilogram concrete-filled drum would never have been found. In Japan at the time, adulthood began at 20. Since none of the perpetrators were 18 yet, they were tried as juveniles, resulting in very light sentences, from 4 to 17 years. Some claim the leniency came from Yakuza influence. On top of that, the court ordered the Minato family, whose home was the site of all these atrocities, to pay $425,000 in compensation. To cover it, they had to sell their house. But the money never reached Junko's family. Everything from the sale went to the friends after their release, likely still due to the supposed Yakuza ties. As for the other perpetrators' parents, the most chilling part is that not all felt guilty. For example, Hiroshi Miyano's mother, while he was still serving time and his friends were gradually getting out, believed, get this, that the victim, Junko Furuta, was to blame for her son's suffering. She even tried to desecrate Junko's grave. After his release, her poor son, Hiroshi, changed his last name to Yokoyama, stayed connected to the Yakuza, took up kickboxing. In 2013, he came very close to going back to prison. Since then, little is known about him, except that he makes money through financial schemes and drives a BMW. In 2018, Shinji Minato was arrested again. After release, he changed his name to Shinji, but the new identity didn't change the person. According to police, the then unemployed 45-year-old Minato attacked a man. Joe Ogura, released in 1999, showed his true colors too. For example, he assaulted a waitress in a Tokyo restaurant and got 4 years in prison. The only one who seems to have somewhat turned things around is Yasushi Watanabe. After prison, he lives with his mother and at least hasn't drawn media attention for crimes. As you can see, almost none of this group of monsters, I can't even call them people anymore, has really changed. Everyone except Watanabe has committed various offenses, big and small. Prison doesn't seem to have had much impact. I also want to mention how Junko's memory is honored today. A film was made based on this story. Of course, the movie is terrible, but what's even worse is that at one point someone drew a manga based on it, and that manga is just disgusting. The author, who is completely sick in the head, sexualized Junko herself and everything she had to go through. I honestly don't even have words to comment on that.